This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. So, if this is your first time coming, so we're just going to give you the executive summary of Parak Aleph, where the way the Gemara in Masechta Pesachim describes the events that transpired. God came to the Navi Hoshea, and he says to Hoshea, "Banecha chatu, your children have sinned." And Hoshea should have responded, "What do you mean, my children? They're your children, God. They're Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov." But because he did not respond that way, instead he responded, "They sinned, so exchange them for another people." So Hashem made the following experiment with Hoshea. He says, take a harlot as a wife and bear children out of this relationship. And the first child was a son, and that child should be called Yisrael. Now, Yisrael does not denote any estranged relationship that this man had with his harlot wife, and it was a reference to the fact that after Yehu killed the house of Achav in Yisrael, because the house of Achav worshipped the Baal, then the house of Yehu themselves tripped up in some of the dust, so to speak, of Avodah Zarah, and they themselves were liable then for killing the house of Achav. You see, since the Beis Yehu killed out Achav's house for their idolatry, the fact that the Beis Yehu themselves then were nichshal in the same Avera indicated that they must have killed the Beis Yehu in to some degree in cold blood. That was the name of the first child that Hoshea produced from the Zaina. Then she conceived a second child to him, and her name was Loi Ruchama, without mercy. The Malbim said that the fact that it was a daughter indicated a certain weakness of the Jewish people at this point of time. This was a reference to the 10 Shvatim and their exile. They were not strong at that time. In fact, the Malbim said this is a reference to the kings that came after Yehu. They were Melachim Chaloshim, weaker kings. However, the Malchus Yehuda then took more power, and the third child was called Loi Ami. So the progression was, the first child was Yisrael, indicating no strains in relation. The second child was Loi Ruchama, without love. Okay, even if you don't love your wife, she's still your wife. There's still a relationship. But the third child was called Loi Ami, not my people. That indicated that the relationship was being terminated. So with that, we begin in Parak Beis, and the Gemara says that God's message to Hoshea was, take this harlot, have these children, and then cast them away, send them away. And Hoshea responded, I can't send them away. I'm married to her. I have children from her. Well, God said, these are my children. How do you expect me to send them away? Now, if we pick up in the Gemara Pesachim on Peizayin and Beis, at this point in time, Hoshea has remorse that he responded this way. At this point in time, God says, you should learn from Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu separated from his wife. Why don't you separate from your wife? He said, Hashem said, if you have a wife who's a Zaina and children who are Zanunim, and you don't even know that they're yours, and you still have a difficult time sending them away, Bnei Yisrael, who are Bnei Bechuni, Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, one of the 4 kinyanim that I acquired in my world, right? And we discussed that at length last week, that the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says there are 5 kinyanim. The Gemara here in Pesachim says there are 4 kinyanim. So Hoshea has remorse. This is where the Parak Beis begins. Kivan sheyada shachata, the Gemara says, since he realized he sinned, amad levakesh rachamim al atzmai. He wanted to request mercy for himself. Amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu, ad she'atam mevakesh rachamim al atzmacha, bakesh rachamim al Yisrael shagazarti aleim sholish gezeros bavarecha. I've decreed 3 punishments on the Jewish people on your account. So he prayed for them. He was mavato the gezerah Shenemar. Let's start Parak Beis. Parak Beis begins, and we mentioned this is the Haftarah of Parshas Bamidbar. The Haya Mispar Bnei Yisrael. It will be the number of the Bnei Yisrael, Kechol Hayam, like the sand of the sea. Asher lo yimad, that cannot be counted. Now, this is a little bit difficult, because make up your mind. Are they as numerous as the sea, or can they not be counted? Sand is finite. Cannot be counted is infinite. So is it Kechal Hayam, or is it Asher Lo Yimad? So the Gemara says in Masechta Yuma that it depends. When we do Ritzono Shel Makom, then it will be Lo Yisafer. When we don't do Ritzono Shel Makom, then we will be finite Kechal Hayam. Okay. So V'haya, and it will be B'makayim Asher Yeyamer Lohem, in lieu of it having been said to them, Lo Ya'ami Atem, you are not my nation. Yeyamer Lohem, it will be said of them, B'nei Kelchai, children of the living God. Right? And we also mentioned, and it's I to repeat the Gemara in Kedushin, I believe it's Lamed Vav, the Machlekes from Meir and Rabbi Huda, where Rabbi Huda said that when we do Ritzono Shel Makom, we're called Banim. When we're Ein Oisim Ritzono Shel Makom, we're not called Banim. But Rav Meir is of the opinion what? Ben Kach U'Ben Kach Nekra Makom. And the final pasuk Rav Meir quotes is this pasuk, V'haya b'makom asher yeyamer lohem lo ya'ami atem yeyamer lohem b'nei kel chai, which indicates that even when we're banim mashchisim, even when we're corrupt, we're still called what? Banim ma'aliyah, we're still called good children. Okay.
If a Jewish man has a wayward wife, sure she's a wayward wife, is he allowed to live with her?
No.
So why do you have a problem of getting rid of his wife? Because we said that one.
He didn't even know who the kids were from, you saying?
They only said, I thought we learned last week that one was definitely not his. It was through a...
Alright, so we learned that the second one was loy to him, and the third one is unclear. But I don't know that you just get rid of a wife just because you suspect her of... She maintains a cheskas kashus unless she's a soita, you have an eid echad, but just a suspicion. And what Hoshea was saying is it's difficult. Look, the reality is that many marriages continue despite things that occur because it's difficult to part. Okay, so this is the pasuk.
So,
now let's take a look at Rashi. Again, there's obviously a very big shift over here because Parak Aleph is God is saying Loi Ruchama, Loi Ami, and all of a sudden, Parak Beis was a Aleph. Instead of saying Loi Ami, all of a sudden Bnei Kelchaya, all of a sudden they're the best kinderlach. Well, what happened? That's a big switch. It's a big switch. Now, even though you say the Prakim were not of Jewish origin, but it is in the Nevi'im. There's a Samach over here. Samach indicates that it's an open, it's a new Parsha. It's a new Parsha. So, for instance, if you davened in a shul which did things the correct way and they had a klaf for the Haftarah, then and you were learning this Haftarah, then you notice it would be an opening at the beginning of the Parsha. Actually, recently, a klaf for Haftarah is very important. There was a Hachnasa Sefer Torah in Brooklyn, and in honor of a certain Rav, and Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky was there, and he spoke, and he said, it's very nice that you're getting a new Sefer Torah, but most shuls have many Sefer Torah. What's with the klaf? You have to have a klaf for the Haftarah. So it's not always financially feasible, but it's a very good thing to do. Okay, fine. Otherwise, Mishnah Berurah recommends, when you're listening to the Haftarah, you should really read along quietly, because it's questionable whether you're yotzei just by hearing somebody lean it from the stone Tanakh or whatever or the Koran. Okay, so take a look in Rashi. In Rashi on Pasuk Aleph, V'hoya mispar ma inyan paranos u'nechamas muchem b'dibar echad. How do you have punishment and consolation juxtaposed to each other back to back? Rabbi Seinu pershu b'psachim. Our rabbis explain in Psachim, like we just mentioned. Hirgish Hoshea ba'atzmai shechata. Hoshea realized that he sinned al sha'amar because he said hachlifim, exchange the Jewish people. Amar ubikesh aleim rachamim. Therefore he requested for mercy. Now Rashi brings down a fantastic mashal from the Sifri. This is not what the Gemara says in Psachim. Uve Sifri the Beirav, Parshas Vayeshev, the Sifri of Parshas Vayeshev says on the Parsha Vayeshev Yisrael Beshitim. Right? Obviously it's not in Vayeshev because there's no Sifri on Vayeshev. Vayeshev Yisrael Beshitim is the end of what? Parshas Balak. The Sifri is on Parshas Bamidbar. Right? The Sifra is on Vayikra. Shanina Rebbe Yomer Yesh Parsha Smucha Zu Lazu Urachayka Zu Mizu Kerachak Mizrach Mimarav. You could have two parshios that are back to back, and yet they are worlds apart. Like east is far from west. Ki atem loyami v'haya misra b'nei Yisrael chayim ma'inyan ze etzel. Right? Perek Aleph begins Ki atem loyami, and Perek Beis begins You are my people. We won't even be able to count you. Mashal Lamelech. It's like a king. Shekas alishta. He got angry at his wife. Shalach achar ha-sofer alavi lichtav laget. He sent the sofer. No sofer, come write the bill of divorce. In the meantime, she cooked him some good chicken soup, and they got back together, and she consoled him. Ad shaloi ba ha-sofer nisratza ha-melech le'ishtay. They reconciled. Amar HaMelech, Efshar Yatza Sefer Zeh Mikan Chaluk. Was he going to leave empty-handed? Koloimar Libay Chaluk V'Toya Loimar Lo Mashalach Acharai. The Sefer is going to think I'm a Meshugana. You call the Sefer, get over here right away! And he comes, and the Sefer says, yeah, and the king says, whatever, just checking, nothing, never mind.
I don't need you.
So the Sefer is going to think the king's a Meshugana. He's going to be embarrassed. Amar Loi Boy because of law. So the king makes up. He says, "You know what? Write to my wife. I'm doubling her ksuba." Right? Amar Loi boy because of lashani koifelo ksubasa. So too Hashem calls Hoshea. He tells Hoshea, "Go, basically, tell the Jewish people prophecy that I'm throwing them away. I'm sending them off. Loi ami, loi ruchama." And then Hoshea sort of does tshuva. So Hashem, where the Jewish people regain their favor in the eyes of Hashem. So Hashem's going to be, so to speak, embarrassed. So what did I call Hoshea for? If I called Hoshea to tell the Jewish people I'm throwing them away, and now Hashem reconciled, it's going to be an embarrassing situation. So therefore Hashem says, go tell the Jewish people, they'll be so numerous, they won't be able to be counted, they won't be enumerated.
How does it? You said Hoshea did tshuva. Okay, but how does that help? He didn't sin. It was, well, a little sin by not saying the right thing. But how does that help the Jewish people? Why do they deserve anything? They didn't do tshuva. He did.
Right. So what we see from here is that the Jewish people were being held accountable for their representative. In other words, because of Hoshea's attitude of hechlifein b'u'ma'acheres, exchange them, the Jewish people were going to be punished. That's what Hashem says. Don't pray for yourself, pray for Klal Yisrael, because Shegazarti aleim shalosh gezeros ba'avurecha. I made 3 decrees because of you. And Hoshea was mavatal l'gzera on Klal Yisrael.
Do we know what the gezeros were?
Doesn't say. Now, what this mashal is exactly is difficult to understand, because I can understand if a king calls a sofer to divorce his wife and he changes his mind, so he's going to look bad. I mean, this is Hashem. Hashem called Hoshea to prophecy and muster to the Jewish people, and now they didn't deserve it anymore, so he changed his mind. So it would look bad for Hashem to not give Hoshea some kind of message, so he gives a message of hope. It's very interesting.
Well, that's the concept. Is Hashem going to be embarrassed? That's a human...
Right, that's
trait,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently, we see another example of the rule that Malchusa Deshmaya Kein Malchusa Da'ara, that God runs the heavenly domain the way a earthly domain is run. And it has to operate with a certain system, and that system is the way things work down here.
Tight ship.
Yeah. Okay. Now Rashi then says, "L'fi pshuta," the simple pshat here, "Kach yismichase." This is the juxtaposition. Ki atem lo yami, you're not my people. V'anochi lo yeh lachem. Ere atzmi, I see myself ki'ilu eini lachem, as if I don't belong to you. V'tiglu levein ha'umais, and you will be exiled. V'yavsham tirbu v'titzmachu. There too you will increase and flourish. V'sham tashuvu el levavchem. There you will place to your heart lashav elai, to return to me. K'may shenemar al yedei Moshe v'hashevois el vavecha v'chol ha'goyim asher hidichacha v'shav Hashem lekecha eshavuscha. In other words, according to the simple meaning, God, so to speak, hides from us, forsakes us. We go into Galus, and it is there that we recognize Hashem and return to Him. But in any event, according to Rashi, especially according to the Drush of the Sifri, this is a nevuah of hope, because Hashem reconciled. The Ibn Ezra learns that no, this parsha follows the previous back to back. This is not a message of hope. This is a message of chastisement. Look in the Ibn Ezra. V'haya Zois ha-parsha davkahi. It's connected. Ki b'makom shagalu sham, because in the place that they're exiled, yolidu banim rabim, they will have many children. Rak enam yireim es Hashem, they will not fear God. So what does it mean? They are called bnei kelchai. Says Ibn Ezra, uperish v'haya b'makom kamay tachas. B'makom doesn't mean instead. Makom means under. Tachas lo yavadata. In other words, v'atam shem karam atzam bnei kelchai. The reason is they call themselves the sons of the living God. V'hein be'emes lo yami. But the truth is they are not. So the Ibn Ezra learns this pasuk that despite the fact, I guess, tachas b'mokom asher yomer lehem lo yami atem, instead of them realizing that they are lo yami, they say about themselves they are bnei kelchai, which is a rather interesting way of reading it. Now, but according to the Sifri, again, this is a prophecy of hope. V'nikbetzu bnei Yehuda u'bnei Yisrael yachdav. The bnei Yehuda and the bnei Yisrael, the 2 shvatim, the 10 shvatim, will gather yachdav together. V'samu lahem rosh echad. They will appoint one leader, v'yalu min haaretz, and they will arise from the land. Ki gadol yom Yisrael, for the day of Yisrael is great. Now, what does that mean? What is the Yom Yisrael? Let us begin with the Radak. How's that? Says the Radak, V'nikbetzu b'nei Yehuda b'nei Yisrael yachdav, v'zeh yeh b'kibbutz galuyos. This will be by the ingathering of the exiles, b'mei HaMashiach, in the times of Mashiach. Ki b'bayis sheni lo yalu elo Yehuda v'Inyamin. During Bayis Sheni, only the 2 tribes went up, Shagalu b'Babel. So if you're having a nevuah that the Bnei Yehuda and the Bnei Yisrael will gather together, this is obviously not talking about Bayis Sheni. This must be talking about La'asalavai. And they will come up from the land. Which land? America. All the Golos. May Eretz Galusam, Yalu La'artzam. V'hamafarshim zeho inyan ala Golos. Inenu Nachaim. Those who say this is referring to the exile itself, it's not correct. Kima inyan v'samu lahem roish echad l'mi sheyech b'galus. What does appointing one leader got to do with going into galus? V'gam v'olu min haaretz ki hayalai laimar v'yardu. So it's obviously not referring to galus. Go to the next Radak. Now, who is this? The Radak
Talking.
The Radak says, Mashiach lo yeh lahem l'roish ad shiur b'Yerushalayim. They have to first go up. Some say this refers to Eliyahu Hanavi. Okay. Ki gadol Yom Yisrael. What is the Yom Yisrael? Yom eis shenishbar kashtam be'emek Yisrael. The day that their bow will break in the valley of Yisrael will be very great. Yisrael, if you look back, And Pasuk Daled, Vayomer Hashem Elav, Kirash Shema Yisrael, Ki Oid Ma'at, this is Parak Aleph, Pasuk Daled, Ufakarati as Demei Yisrael al Beis Yehu. The house of Yehu killed out the house of Achav at a location called Yisrael. So this Pasuk, according to Radak, is a reference back to the Yom Yisrael, the day that the Beis Yehu will be broken in the valley of Yisrael for killing out the house of Achav. Gadolhu. It's great. U'ma'od arach zman galusam. And that, in other words, Yom Yisrael refers to the Galus. In other words, once God broke the house of Yehu for destroying the house of Achav, that Galus lasted a very, very long time. Betam avoinam begalosh arzman rav, and their sin was finally wiped clean in the long and bitter exile. That is the opinion of Radak. Yom Yisrael refers to the Galus. However, Rashi here learns a little differently. Rashi says that Yisrael, who's the Rosh Echad? David Malkam. Their one head is King David. Ki Gadol Yom Kibbutz Zuriyasam, the gathering of their seed. Yisrael is a lashon of what? Zera. In fact, Tosfos in the Masechta Psachim on Daf Pei Zayin Amud Beis, he says Yisrael al Shem Ha'asid. In the future, Sheyizru U'Bagayla, they will be planted in the Galus. In the Sheyizru U'Bagayla, they will be planted in the Galus.
It's true.
Okay. So the Gemara says, now I want to read to you another Gemara. This is Gemara on Pei Chesam and Aleph. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Gadol kibbutz galiyos ki yom shenivru bai shamayim va'aretz. Great is the ingathering of the exiles, like the day that heaven and earth were created. Shenemar v'nikbitzu b'nei Yehuda u'b'nei Yisrael yachdav v'samu lahem rosh echad v'yalu min haaretz. Why? Ki gadol yom Yisrael. Uchsiv v'yihi erev v'yivoker yom echad. It says yom by Bria Shemayim v'aretz. It says yom by the ingathering of the exiles. Ki gadol yom Yisrael. So we see from here, great is the day of the ingathering of the exiles, like the creation of heaven and earth.
Just because it says yom?
So what's the significance of the fact that it says yom?
That's a stretch. That sounds like an info.
Apparently there's something unusual about the word yom. Rabbi, so let's take a look here at the Malbim. Yeah? So let's go back to Pasuk Aleph. See the Malbim? Hoshea. Now this is the answer of Hoshea. Hoshea, Tshuvas Hoshea, Davar Zeh, Hura Be'enei Hoshea. This was bad in Hoshea's eyes. L'garish es ishta v'yesvanav, to divorce his wife and kids. V'lechen chazar midvarav hakoidmim. He therefore retracts from his original words. V'hischal elam yizchus al Yisrael. He starts advocating on behalf of the Jewish people. Amar al Hashem, ich tirtzel shalech es aim hachnesiya v'esbanea. How can I send away this woman and her children? But in the future, in other words, the Malbim is reading the Drush Kipshutai. In other words, this is not a new nevuah that Hashem, like the Sifri learns that Hashem had originally called Hoshea to prophecy disaster, but then when he changed his mind, he had in prophecy hope. No, this is Hoshea's response to Hashem. Hashem said, send them away. Hoshea says, I can't send them away. You know why? Because in the future, the truth is, sand has a count, has a number. In other words, is there a number of the sand? Yeah. But could you count it practically? No, because it's too numerous. So you can't be soy for it. Well, so you know what? So I won't count it. I won't count the granules. I'll measure it, right? Say it's what? I'll weigh it. I'll measure it, right? We'll say it's a mile long, and no, it says the Malbim. You can't measure it either. Why? Most of the sand is hidden in the depths of the sea. With the you can't even get there. In other words, we were reading it poetically. Lo yimad, lo yisafer. The Malbim says no. Lo yimad, lo yisafer is to count. Lo yimad is to measure. Measuring is not even possible. Im mitzad ribuyam. First of all, you can't count the Jews because there's so many. Im mitzad sheyu mifuzar minasam ba'avsei. They are scattered to the ends of the world, right? We don't know exactly the Aseres Hashvatim and all these lost tribes and these people who have some kind of connection. Ad sherabim me'asher chashim ka'ivdim. Many of the Shvatim are considered as lost. Ki inam yodea makom, the Bnei Moshe, Bnei Menashe, this tribe, that tribe, this the group of people in Africa and India. Ein yodea makom kechol atom ma'amak yamim. The analogy is perfect. The same way most sand, we can't even locate to begin measuring it. Most Jews, you cannot locate them. We don't know where they are. What country are they in? What tribe do they belong to? And we can add in America too. If you ever took a look at any census that was taken in this country, how are you supposed to count the Jewish people? Most Jews are not affiliated. Most Jews probably don't even know they're Jewish. So it's impossible to count the Jews. So and that it will be in the future that even though now Hashem says, you are not my people, now there are Jews who are cast away in the ends of the earth. But the time will come, they'll all recognize that God is still alive, and He's overseeing His children with wondrous hashgacha. That's how they existed and lasted throughout the Golos, and it will become known that we are the selected children of Hashem. And in other words, this is all Hoshea's response to God. He's saying, God, I can't send them away. Maybe now they are considered to you as not your children, but the day will come that they will be so numerous and they will appreciate your hashgacha pratis, and therefore I can't cast them away now. Pasuk Beis in the Malbim, v'nikvetzu, they will be gathered, v'achar kach, v'achar sayomim, yiskabzu ha'mefuzarim. Those who are scattered will be gathered. Bein b'nei Yehuda, whether it's the b'nei Yehuda, they were shegalu b'churim ma'is rishon, aydei Nebuchadnezzar, shelo yishovu kulam b'mei Ezra. Whether it's the b'nei Yehuda who will return, because they didn't all return in the times of Ezra. Ubein b'nei Yisrael, shehem asaras hashvatim, who were exiled through the king of Ashur. Kulam yiskabzu mimakomes pezureim, they will all gather from their place of being scattered. V'yiyu yachtav la'am echad. V'gam yosim lahem roish echad. Who is the roish? Mashiach ben Yosef. Shehu yiyah l'roish aleim tchila. He will first be the head. Va'olu min ha'aretz. He will emerge. Yalu miklal kadur ha'aretz. He will come up from the globe of the land. Shem nefaitzim by l'Eretz Yisrael. Ki gadol yom Yisrael. What does this mean? It says in Malbim, Sha'az Shem haben Harishain. Then the name of the first son of Hoshea, who's called Yisrael, Shenikra Yisrael, L'hoyrois al Mishpat Hashem bam, to indicate the acknowledgement of God's judgment to them. Yiskayim ba'ofen acher, will be fulfilled in another way. In other words, the original naming of Yisrael. Why was the first child called Yisrael? That was an acknowledgement of Hashem's judgment. But now the name Yisrael will have another meaning. Vizrati Ali Ba'aret Sheyikra B'Shem Yisrael Me'inyan Zriya will be like a planting. Sha'agolus Yadome Kezareya Garina Tvua. The Golus will now appear like someone who plants seeds. Ba'oimek ha'adama, in the depth of the ground. V'nid maloi sha'garnim nirkavu v'nivla. At first, when you plant a seed in the ground, it appears like the seed will rot away and the seed will wither away. But then, lo and behold, the water reaches the seed and it blooms, it blossoms forth. And you will release a fruit, tfua kiflei kiflayim, in much greater qualities than the seed itself. Ken yatzitzu min hagoyim. So too they will sprout from the exile, shenizru ba'artzos shivyam, that they were planted in the land of their captivity. Amrav, a great numerous nation, that they will not be able to count the marvel noise because of all the converts that will be added to them. V'yom Yisrael. Why is the day of the, interesting, what says the Mama, why is the day of the ingathering of the Golus called Yom Yisrael? Because it's really, Golus is analogous to a seed. A seed is something planted deep in the ground. Actually, before a seed sprouts, it has to rot. And after it rots, only then it sprouts. So too, Klal Yisrael in the Golus, it seems like we're going lost. It seems like we're rotting. But the truth is, the day will come that will blossom forth and emit the beautiful fruits. That's why the Yom of the Kibbutz Golus is called Yom Yisrael. Hanu Yom Shetiskala Azri Azos. The day that this planting will be revealed, Shazara Lekim Bi'aretz. V'yisa alumoisav. Yom zeh yeh gadol ma'od. This day will be very great. Mitzad hanisim v'hagedoylo sheyasa Hashem la'imahu le'enei kol hagoyim. Pasuk Gimel.
So, one of the things the Mashiach has to do is defeat Amalek, right?
What?
No? Or we do that first?
Gimel Dvarim Nitztav Yisrael B'chnisasam La'aretz. What is that? Destroy Amalek. And
then
build a Beis HaMikdash.
Yeah. The king's left.
To appoint a king to destroy Amalek.
Right. So it makes sense because only Yosef knows.
Now, it's interesting the Malbim invokes Mashiach ben Yosef here. Because we did have, the Radak said, that Mashiach will not make an appearance until we enter Eretz Yisrael. So what is that referring to? Is that referring to Mashiach ben David? Why? What exactly is the role of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David? So we've spoken out many times in the world of the Vilna Gaon. Mashiach ben Yosef will take care of Galus Edom, will take us out of Galus Edom. Mashiach ben David will take us out of Galus Yishmael. The remez being that Yosef is called a Shar. B'char Sharei Hadarlai. Esav is called a Shar. So the Mashiach ben Yosef, the Shar, will take us out of Mashiach of Galus Edom. But Yishmael is referred to as the Chamar, like it says Shvu lachem payim hachamar, and Mashiach ben David is Ani v'roichev al Chamar. That is in the world of the Vilna Gaon. In the world of the Ramchal, there's another concept, and I don't think we ever spoke this out before, and that is that Adam Arishon was placed in Gan Eden, and he was placed in Gan Eden. So what was he supposed to do there? He's already there. He never sinned. What was he supposed to do before he sinned? There was no. The answer is Hashua la'avdo l'shamra, which is, even though there was no chait and kilkol, but God was hidden. His job was to recognize God on a higher level, and that would have been the ultimate. That would have been the tikkun hashalim. So all Adam had to do was be megale Hashem, who was hidden. However, after he sinned,
But
he covered, besides the hastara of Hashem, besides the fact that Hashem was B'seisar, then Hashem was now, the ability to find Hashem was also restrained from him through the chet and through the kilkel that he brought to the world.
I don't get it. God was revealed to him, gave him a commandment, and then it says.
So what was he supposed to do there?
God is walking in the.
What's he supposed to do in Gan Eden? You know, there was an element of Bechira. So what was the element of Bechira? What was his job? What was his avodah? His avodah was, he had some relationship with Hashem. Even Nevi'im do, but just because Hashem speaks to Nevi'im, it doesn't mean Hashem is mamish b'goloi. There's still some type of veil where Hashem is not completely apparent. And Adam HaRishon's job was to uncover that veil to even greater extent. However, after the sin cloaked and covered the Seiser with Kilkel on top of that. So Mashiach ben Yosef, he brings the world back to the way Adam HaRishon had it before the sin. In other words, Mashiach ben Yosef removes the Kilkel. Mashiach ben David is able to take the level of Adam HaRishon before the sin and bring him to that which he should have achieved in Gan Eden originally. Okay, maybe that will be explored more on a different occasion. I believe this is the world of the Ramchal, the Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. That, in other words,
Amalek comes from Edom.
Amalek comes from Edom.
Right, so it makes sense. So you need a Mashiach. Yes.
Okay, but the concept being that you need someone to remove the kilkel to get you back to where Adam Rishon was, and now be able to make the decision of finding Hashem b'seiser without the kilkel. Should do one more pasuk. Imru la'achechem. Tell your brothers, Ami, you are my nation. V'la'achoseichem, and your sisters, Ruchama, I do have mercy on you. Says Rashi, Imru la'achechem. In other words, in lieu of the fact that kid number 2 was Loi Ruchama and kid number 3 was Loi Ami, now go to your sister and say, Ami, you are my nation. Go tell your sister, tell your brother you are Ami, your third brother, right? The third child who's a brother. Tell him Ami. Your sister who's Loi Ruchama, tell her Ruchama. So this is a retraction, it seems, of what Hashem said originally. Let's take a look at Targum. Targum has an interesting explanation. Neviyaya emaru la'achechain. Ami, my nation. Tuvu la'oiraisi. Come back to my Torah. V'yalkeni shaschoin arachim. And on your assemblies I will have mercy. So, Imru la'achechem, tell your brother, Ami. Ami is a reference to, it's a command to do tshuva. Says Radak quotes Rav Sadia Goin. Imru la'achechem Ami. Perush Rav Sadia Goin, Zal. Oimer, l'shevet Yehuda ben Yamin. Tell Yehuda and Ben Yamin, Achechem aser sashvatim. The 10 tribes, Shayukruim loyami, they were called not my nation, Bizman Shayu Oisam Arabe Ine Hashem, Bimizman Shivas Agolus Imru Lehem Ami. So the loyami, according to Rav Sadigan, was hurled at the Aser Sashvatim. V'lach Oisechem Ruchama, that I guess refers to Yehuda and Ben Yamin. Tell them they are okay. Now here's where the nevuah turns. Pasuk Daled. Rivu ve'imchem. Strive, or the English chant says, remonstrate with your mother. Rivu, remonstrate. Ki hi lo yishti, she's not my wife. V'anoichi lo yisha, I'm not her husband. V'soser zenunea mipanea, remove her promiscuity from her face. V'na'afufeha, and her adulterousness, mi bein shadeha. So now all of a sudden things turn again. Now all of a sudden the Navi is commanded, go remonstrate with your mother. Now who's the mother? Who's that a reference to? The Isha Zoina. And go tell, and now who is commanded to tell the mother that you're not my wife? For the first, in Pasuk Gimel, it was addressed to seemingly Yisrael. Go tell your brother that he is Ami. Go tell your sister that she is Ruchama. Now go tell your mother she's not my wife. Well, wait a second. No, I can't have your cake and eat it. If the mother's not the wife and I'm not the husband, then the kids are not the kids. So what's going on over here? What's changing? Is there a change of tone over here? Is there a change of tone? So this fits in according to the Ibn Ezra. According to the Ibn Ezra, there was never any hope. The Bnei Kelchai they called themselves Bnei Kelchai. They thought they were Ami and Ruchama, but they really weren't. Let's see the Radak. Actually, let's start with Mari Kara. We'll read this and then we'll call it a day. Rivu be'imchem. Kihi lo yishti. Tell your mother she's not my wife. Anochi lo ish, I'm not her husband. V'sasa zinunea mipanea. Harei shnei ksuvin. Hamakchishin zezeh. You have Mari Kara? These are two psukim that contradict each other. Kasav echad oimer imru la'achei mami. One pasuk says, tell your brother that he's my nation. Shehim b'nai v'inam yaldei zenunam. Because of echad oimer rivu b'imchem v'sasa zenuneh arei abanim yaldei zenunam heim. Says the Marikar, it's a mashal. Mashal la'adam shesarcha la'ishtoi. A woman went sour because the Baal got angry. V'kara zoyna min ha'efes. He said, you zoyna. The kid says, watch out. You're angry. You're calling her names, but realize it has repercussions on us. Because if you call the mom a zoyna,
we're
right? Then what does that say about us? You're moitzi laz on us, that we're b'nei zenunim. The father says, chas v'shalom. I don't mean it. Chas v'shalom. No, you're not b'nei zenunim. What I want, you're a good kinderla, but what I want you to do is I want you to shake up the mother. And she should know that I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. To the extent that I'm calling her this name. It's not really a truthful comment, but it's merely a way of shaking her up. Vu shivam chas v'sham shani noisein oisa lefanai bas kliyav shetachas isha tikach ezarim ve'einchem b'nei zunin elarivu be'imchem shetusar shetivasar. Remonstrate with your mother that she should be chastened. V'hishmiua, let her hear. Shani oimer ki hi lo yisha nech lo yisha. Kamay gem zarcha omer l'naviyim. So too Hashem tells the Nevi'im, tell your brother that Klal Yisrael is my nation. Tell Knesset Yisrael that I'm going to have mercy. But tell the nation, let her know that she is not my wife, meaning she needs to shape up from the znus that she's turning to, that she learned from Mitzrayim and Asher and Kazdim. But this is merely a way of stirring her, of jolting her, but not really necessarily an accurate description of her status. That's how the Marikar reads it. Okay, Rabbi, sorry. Have a great day. Bye.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.